The ratings for Wednesday's edition of AEW Dynamite on TBS have been revealed. WWE talent reactions to The Rock's Pat McAfee interview, as well as his controversial Instagram comments, have been revealed. We've got an update on Stokely Hathaway's return to AEW television this week as FTR's new agent. We have an injury update on AEW wrestler Brian Cage. 3 WWE superstars are officially listed as heels on the internal WWE roster. The Nevers have stolen the TNA tag team titles after confronting past trauma and more at the Hardy compound on TNA Impact last night. TNA Impact will air live on Thursday next week at a special start time. WWE Hall of Famer Sean Waltman will corner the Rascals and Ace Austin at TNA Rebellion. Ethan Page abandons Frankie Kazarian in the tag team main event on TNA Impact. Fatal Influence will be competing this weekend at Rebellion in TNA Wrestling. And several stars have been added to the upcoming Ring of Honor Women's Pure Title Tournament. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of news stories to get into in the world of professional wrestling. As you can see right there, we're at 21,341 subscribers. So if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe and join the ever-expanding WNU, that being the Wrestling News universe. In addition to that, you can join the WN365 roster, links in the video description, or you can scan the QR code when it appears on the sidebar. Speaking of the sidebar, you can see all upcoming watch-alongs and post-shows that we're going to be doing on the channel. Let's get straight into today's stories, beginning with the ratings for Wednesday's edition of AEW Dynamite on TBS. All Elite Wrestling returned to the Big Easy on April 23rd as the fans in the Uno Lakefront Arena in New Orleans, Louisiana got to witness the latest episode of AEW Dynamite. Hip-hop icon and New Orleans native Master P helped Kenny Omega, Swerve Strickland and the Ops fight off the Death Riders. Stokely Hathaway made his first appearance in 6 months, aligning himself with FTR as their new agent, and Jamie Hayter advanced to the final of the 2025 Women's Owen Hart Foundation Cup Tournament, defeating Chris Statlander in the semi-finals. Dynamite has seen a steady rise in recent weeks when it comes to their TV ratings, but that wasn't the case this week as WrestleNomics have confirmed that the show only averaged 521,000 viewers. This is a 17% drop from the previous week's 624,000 viewers and 18% below the trailing 4-week average of 635,000 viewers. It's the second lowest viewership Dynamite has ever earned in its regular time slot. It was a similar story when it comes to the 18 to 49 demographic, with the show posting a 0.14 number, an 80% drop from the 0.17 number posted 7 days earlier, and the trailing 4-week average, which is also a 0.17. This Dynamite had to rank approximately 8th for the evening amongst all primetime cable telecasts, one of its lowest rankings in recent memory. Now, in terms of the quarter-hour ratings, these come courtesy of WrestleNomics. Shout out to them and be sure to subscribe to their Patreon service. As I mentioned, it ranked approximately 8th for the evening amongst all primetime telecasts, one of the lowest rankings in recent memory, but that can be put down to the show airing live on the West Coast, the 3 NBA playoff games it went up against, and the 2 NHL playoffs that aired all at the exact same time. However, Dynamite was also beaten by Fox News coverage and an episode of Summer House on Bravo, meaning that Dynamite could rank as low as 10th for the evening if all 3 hours of Fox News topped the 18 to 49 number that Dynamite posted. Now, in terms of more reactions to that, if we get any, we'll let you know in a future news video. Of course, it's been a big week for WWE and a controversial one regarding Creative, the WrestleMania main event, and The Rock's comments on the Pat McAfee show, as well as social media regarding his lack of appearance on the grandest stage of them all. Now, The Rock appeared on Pat McAfee's show and posted an Instagram comment to Dave LaGreca that caused a stir this week. Fightful Select say they reached out to a bunch of WWE talent and staff about their thoughts. A number of talent took note of the fact that The Rock was not at TV, on TV, or at WrestleMania, didn't do any promotion leading up to the event, or even tweet about the show coming up. Another talent pointed out he didn't tweet about the show, but quickly appeared on a podcast after the event and discussed being called to advance ticket sales and some things he took issue with on the show. Another WWE source did back up the idea of The Rock being called to help ticket sales for WWE Elimination Chamber, which was seen as a big boost internally. Prior to that, the creative sources Fightful spoke to had been told to work on the assumption that The Rock wouldn't be working or be at the show. Many figured that would change after Elimination Chamber, but were told not to factor him in heavily to promos. Now, a long-time talent said that the roster always loves seeing The Rock at shows, but noted that the card is at the mercy of Dwayne. Comments from a top talent last year was something they believe pulls The Rock in both ways. One person there that Fightful spoke to claimed The Rock didn't want to be seen as interfering with WrestleMania plans like last year, but possibly didn't understand how integral he would be to the story. There were a number of talent who brought up that The Rock wasn't referenced, but said that if there were issues with he and Triple H, as the world has speculated, it hasn't made it to the rest of the roster yet. There have always been rumors that the two had a rivalry that was based on respect, but was contentious at times. Now, ultimately, The Rock's absence and subsequent comments weren't met with as much frustration from the roster and staff that we spoke to, as opposed to confusion, according to Fightful. One talent speculated it was an overcorrection and cited last year's reaction to Rock being inserted, but said it was a wildly different situation. A lot of talent were discussing backstage about Rock's absence from WrestleMania, him not mentioning it, his lack of promotion for the show, him barely being referenced on the show. Now, one talent said, quote, "We all found it kind of weird that he didn't promote the show at all," end quote. Now, regarding the comment to Dave LaGreca of Busted Open's rant, one talent said, quote, "What does that mean? Is he working every time he stops by and talks to us backstage too? Was that Pat McAfee interview a work, even though he specified it wasn't in character?" Of course, if we get any more details, we'll let you know in a future video. Now, Stokely Hathaway, he made his return to AEW television this week. He's back after nearly a 6-month absence. Hathaway appeared on the April 24th episode of AEW Dynamite alongside Dax Harwood and Cash Wheeler as their new agent for their heel run. Hathaway hadn't been on the road in a while, but this wasn't necessarily new creative. Fightful Select reporting they're told this idea was pitched and possibly close to coming to fruition last year. Before his absence, Hathaway was seen scouting tag teams, which included him watching an FTR match in the background of one of his vignettes. Those that Fightful have spoken to say this was broached last year. Fightful told the creative on the situation adjusted when the Outrunners got hot and the decision was made to have them involved with FTR instead. A bit of an update here when it comes to the injury status of Brian Cage. In the build-up to All Elite Wrestling's Dynasty pay-per-view on April 6th, many fans assumed that the Murder Machines, Brian Cage and Lance Archer, would be the ones to challenge for the AEW World Tag Team Championships. However, those plans were changed due to the news that Cage had suffered a legitimate knee injury whilst at an independent event, causing Big Bill and Brian Keith to be inserted into their place. Dave Meltzer, who originally broke the story about Cage's injury, corrected himself on a recent episode of Wrestling Observer Radio as he revealed that Cage's knee was actually fine, but that was a different injury that he suffered. Quote, "Brian Cage tore his quad, so it's not knee surgery. That sucks. He's going to be out for a while. A torn quad, he ain't going to be back that quick." The injury to Cage not only forced AEW to change their plans for the AEW Tag Team Championship scene, but also meant Cage missed the Mecca X Benefit for Bay event on May 22nd, an event hosted by Future Stars of Wrestling that was dedicated to TNA wrestling star Chris Bay, who made his first wrestling-related appearance since being briefly paralyzed in October of last year. Cage has a number of problems with injury throughout his AEW career, with the former FTW champion suffering a back injury during the first episode of Dynamite in 2024, one that he was able to work through. Most famously, AEW President Tony Khan actually signed Cage back in 2020 while he was still recovering from a bicep injury, eventually debuting at that year's Double or Nothing pay-per-view 4 months after he had reportedly signed with the company. Now, going to WWE, of course, there have been quite a few heel turns, haven't there, over the last week or so on WWE television. 3 stars are now officially listed on the heel side of the roster coming out of WrestleMania 41 weekend. On the Raw after WrestleMania, Rusev made his return to WWE after almost 5 years in AEW. Despite the massive positive reaction to his return, he attacked babyface tag team Otis and Akira Tozawa of the Alpha Academy. PW Insider is reporting that after his re-debut, Rusev is listed on the heel side of the Raw roster. Another big return over the weekend was that of Becky Lynch, who won the Women's Tag Team Championships alongside Lyra Valkyria at WrestleMania, although they then lost them back to Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez on Raw the very next night. Lynch then attacked Valkyria, setting up a feud and a match for Valkyria's Women's Intercontinental Championship. PW Insider reports that Lynch is now listed as a heel on WWE's internal roster for Raw. Another of the big stories of the weekend was Paul Heyman's decision to side with Seth Rollins in the WrestleMania 41 Saturday main event over CM Punk and Roman Reigns. The next night on Raw, Bron Breakker joined Rollins in a beatdown of Punk and Reigns before they stood tall alongside Heyman in the ring. According to PW Insider, Rollins has also now been moved over to the heel side of the roster. Now, going over to TNA Impact last night, in a surreal cinematic segment at the Hardy compound, Ryan Nemeth and Nick Nemeth confronted madness and childhood trauma, yet somehow managed to leave with the TNA Wrestling World Tag Team Championships. The April 24th episode of TNA Impact featured Ryan and Nick Nemeth meeting Matt and Jeff Hardy at their home base, literally. The segment began with them being greeted by returning Willow the Wisp, an alter ego of Jeff Hardy. Then there was a brief spoof of the intro into Kendrick Lamar's Not Like Us before a fight broke out between Jeff Hardy and the former Dolph Ziggler. This portion would end with Jeff crashing through a table on the compound. Later, Wolfie Hardy flexed his chops as a psychiatrist. As it turns out, Ryan Nemeth had to work through some deep-seated trauma for the low price of $10,000. In the end, though, Nemeth realized that some of his demons stem from the fact he was never hugged from his parents. Wolfie charged him an extra $500 for the emotional breakthrough. Ryan Nemeth would also be transformed into an emo, crow-like character thanks to the superpowers of Gothic Baby, that being Evie Hardy. As his emo self, Ryan ended up flopping at stand-up comedy, while Wolfie Hardy killed it in his set. When Nemeth transformed into the Crow character, a soundbite from the Simple Plan song Perfect played in the background. While all of this, which was apparently a hallucination that Ryan was going through as Matt Hardy was drowning him, was occurring, Nick Nemeth was able to steal the physical TNA Tag Team Championship bouts. A match for the TNA World Tag Team Championships will take place between the two brother tag teams at TNA Rebellion this weekend. Now, next week's edition of TNA Impact will be a bit of a special one. There'll be a special start time for TNA Impact. TNA Wrestling has announced the May 1st episode of TNA Impact will air live at 10 p.m. Eastern. The episode will emanate from the Bren Event Center in Irvine, California. The live aspect of the show was previously announced, but the special start time of 10 p.m. Eastern was made official on Thursday's episode of TNA Impact. Matches and segments have yet to be announced for the May 1st episode of the show. Now, this weekend at TNA Rebellion, we're going to be getting a Hall of Fame appearance. A WWE Hall of Famer is coming to TNA Rebellion. TNA Wrestling announced that Sean Waltman, also known as X-Pac, will corner the Rascals and Ace Austin against the System's Brian Myers, Eddie Edwards, and JDC at TNA Rebellion. Alicia Edwards will be in the corner of the System. Waltman is a former TNA X Division champion. He last wrestled for the promotion back in 2010. TNA Rebellion takes place this weekend on April 26th. Now, this weekend at Rebellion, we'll see Ethan Page in action, a current WWE NXT superstar. And NXT's Ethan Page got a head start on the Every Man for Himself stipulation at TNA Rebellion in the main event of TNA Impact. Unfortunately for Frankie Kazarian, he was teaming with Ethan Page against Elijah and TNA World Champion Joe Hendry in the main event of TNA Impact on April 24th. And while the teamwork was going fine throughout the entire match, when it got to the end, Page refused a final tag and allowed Kazarian to be hit with a crossroads and tombstone by Elijah and pinned. There was a strategy to Ethan's dastardly deed. Kazarian and Page will both challenge for TNA's World Championship at TNA Rebellion, and Ethan knows what a weakened Kaz provides more of an opportunity for his success. Of course, the TNA World Champion Joe Hendry also appeared at WrestleMania last weekend. Speaking of Rebellion, over the weekend we're seeing more NXT influence on the show. WWE NXT's Fatal Influence will compete at TNA Rebellion. At the Countdown to TNA Rebellion 2025, the faction known as Fatal Influence, comprising of JC Jane, Fallon Henley, and Jasmine Nix, gets the chance to make a significant impact when they take on Rosemary, Xia Brookside, and Li Ying Li in a 6-woman tag team match. This match was announced on April 24 by Santino Marella after a brawl broke out between the six following a match between JC Jane and Rosemary. And finally, switching over to Ring of Honor, an update when it comes to the Women's Pure Championship. 3 more participants are set in the Ring of Honor Women's Pure Title Tournament. Ring of Honor Wrestling announced that Deonna Purrazzo, Taya Valkyrie, and Lila Gray will compete in the Ring of Honor Women's Pure Title Tournament. The title was introduced on the April 18th episode of ROH on Honor Club. Queen Aminata vs. Serena Deeb was announced as a first-round match for the Ring of Honor Supercard of Honor, but that was before the event was moved from May to July. Now, obviously, more details will be learned at a later date. But there you go, guys, the latest pro wrestling news for you. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. As always, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right-hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.